Stephen Schwarzman was a man of ambition and precision, a self-made billionaire who had built Schwarzman Industries from the ground up. His business empire spanned multiple industries, from finance to real estate, making him a dominant figure in the corporate world. He was respected, admired, and feared in boardrooms, known for his shrewd decision-making and relentless pursuit of success. His wife, Nicole Schwarzman, was equally accomplished in her own right. As a leading art dealer, she had cultivated relationships with some of the world's most renowned artists and collectors. She was known for her impeccable taste and sharp instincts, having launched her own prestigious gallery in New York in 2008. Nicole's influence extended beyond the art world. She was a fixture at elite social events, rubbing shoulders with celebrities, dignitaries, and influential business magnates. Together, Stephen and Nicole epitomized power, wealth, and sophistication. They lived in a lavish penthouse overlooking Central Park, attended the most exclusive galas, and were seen as a formidable duo in both social and business circles. On the crisp autumn evening of November 10, 2012, the Schwarzmans attended an extravagant charity gala at the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan. The event, hosted by a well-known philanthropist, was a gathering of the city's elite. CEOs, artists, and politicians mingled over champagne and caviar. That night, Stephen and Nicole were introduced to Alan and Vanessa Winchester, another high-profile couple who exuded charm and affluence. Alan, a venture capitalist with a golden touch in the tech industry, had built his fortune by investing in promising startups, while Vanessa was a former model-turned-socialite with a passion for fashion and philanthropy. From the moment they met, there was an instant connection between the two couples. They engaged in lively conversations. Stephen and Alan discussed economic trends and investment strategies, while Nicole and Vanessa bonded over their shared love for art and luxury. By the end of the night, the Winchesters extended an invitation to their private estate for an intimate gathering the following weekend, an offer the Schwarzmans eagerly accepted. What began as a casual social acquaintance quickly evolved into a deep and intricate friendship. Over the next several months, the Schwarzmans and the Winchesters became inseparable, attending exclusive art auctions, private yacht parties, and high-profile charity events together. Their connection extended beyond mere social appearances. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a shared world of opulence and power that few could comprehend. As their friendship deepened, their interactions grew more personal. They confided in one another about the pressures of their high-status lives, their ambitions, and even the strains in their marriages. Their trust in one another solidified, creating a bond that was as exhilarating as it was dangerous. They found solace in each other's company, escaping from the demanding expectations of their respective careers and public personas. Little did they know, this closeness would soon push them into uncharted territory, leading them down a path from which there would be no return. One evening, during an intimate gathering at the Winchesters' private estate in the Hamptons, the conversation took an unexpected turn. After a night of wine, laughter, and deep discussions, Vanessa casually introduced the idea of unconventional relationships, hinting at the excitement that came with breaking societal norms. Alan, emboldened by the atmosphere, elaborated on the concept of wife-swapping, suggesting it as a way to keep the excitement alive in their marriages. There was an initial pause, a moment of hesitation from both Stephen and Nicole. The idea was shocking, yet strangely intriguing. The allure of something forbidden, something that added a new thrill to their already extravagant lives, was tempting. After much discussion and reassurance that this would remain purely recreational, Stephen and Nicole agreed to explore the arrangement. What started as an experimental thrill soon became a regular part of their interactions, an unspoken agreement that added an electrifying layer to their already complex relationship. The boundaries between love, lust, and loyalty blurred, setting the stage for consequences none of them could foresee. At first, the arrangement felt exhilarating, an exciting escape from routine. There were no emotions involved, just a game played within the safety of their circle. But as time passed, something shifted. Nicole and Alan, who had always shared an easy camaraderie, began to seek each other out more often. Their conversations became deeper, their stolen glances lingered a little longer, and their encounters took on an intensity neither had anticipated. What was once an arrangement rooted in excitement started evolving into something more dangerous. Something real. Nicole found herself thinking about Alan in ways she never had about another man before. He understood her, listened to her in ways Stephen never did. Alan, in turn, was drawn to Nicole's elegance, her intellect, and the effortless way she carried herself. Their connection went beyond the physical. It was emotional, passionate, and impossible to ignore. Unbeknownst to Stephen and Vanessa, Nicole and Alan's bond had crossed an invisible line, transforming the game into something neither of them could control. As the weeks turned into months, Nicole and Alan found themselves caught in the grip of a powerful, illicit attraction. What had begun as an experimental thrill quickly became an emotional entanglement that neither of them had anticipated. They sought out stolen moments away from their arranged encounters, meeting in secret at luxury hotels, secluded restaurants, and even at Nicole's art gallery after hours. Their passion for one another burned hotter than anything they had experienced before, and the thrill of secrecy only made it more intoxicating. Nicole struggled with her feelings. She still loved Stephen in her own way, but her connection with Alan was different. With him, she felt seen, understood, and desired in a way she hadn't in years. Alan, too, found himself drawn deeper into the affair, unable to resist the pull Nicole had over him. However, the more intense their relationship became, the more dangerous it grew. Their carefully curated world of wealth and discretion was built on appearances, and if their secret was exposed, it would bring consequences none of them were prepared to face. While Nicole and Alan were becoming more entangled in their forbidden romance, Stephen and Vanessa remained oblivious to the depth of their spouse's betrayal. They continued to engage in the wife-swapping arrangement, unaware that the passion they once shared as couples had faded into something else, something exclusive between Nicole and Alan. But small cracks began to form in the illusion. Nicole, who was once so careful about maintaining balance in her marriage, started to pull away from Stephen. She became more distant, distracted, and less interested in their interactions. Stephen, ever the sharp businessman, noticed the change, but dismissed it as stress from her demanding career. Meanwhile, Vanessa began to suspect that something was off with Alan. He had grown more protective of Nicole, more attentive to her in ways that went beyond their arrangement. Vanessa had always prided herself on control, on being the one who set the rules of their unconventional lifestyle, but now she felt as if she was losing her grip. The foundation of their carefully maintained relationships was beginning to crumble, and it was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. Everything came crashing down on the night of March 5th. Nicole had been carrying a secret, one that would change everything: a child. She had recently discovered that she was pregnant, and there was no denying the truth. The baby was Alan's. The realization left her in turmoil. She couldn't hide it forever, and the consequences of her affair were no longer just emotional. They were physical, undeniable, and irreversible. That evening, during a private dinner at the Schwarzmans estate, Nicole made the fateful decision to reveal her pregnancy. She hadn't planned on breaking the news so soon, but the weight of the secret had become unbearable. As she stood before Stephen, Alan, and Vanessa in the grand living room, her voice trembled as she spoke the words that would shatter everything. "I'm pregnant. And it's not Stephen's." The room fell into a stunned silence. Vanessa's face twisted in disbelief before contorting into pure rage. Her eyes burned with betrayal as she turned to Alan, searching his face for denial, but there was none. Alan, too, looked horrified, realizing the full extent of what they had done. Stephen's reaction was equally devastating. His face turned red, his fists clenched, and for the first time in years, he was speechless. The air was thick with tension, betrayal, and fury. The arrangement that had once been a thrilling game had now become a nightmare, and the damage was irreversible. As emotions flared, accusations were hurled, and their once glamorous lives descended into chaos. That night, the Schwarzman estate became the site of a confrontation unlike any they had experienced before. Vanessa was in a blind rage, screaming at Alan for his betrayal. She accused him of falling in love with Nicole, of breaking the rules they had set. Alan, shaken and guilty, tried to explain himself, but the damage was done. Meanwhile, Stephen was equally devastated. He had always prided himself on control, but now he had lost everything. The love of his life had betrayed him, and worse, she was carrying another man's child. Nicole tried to reason with Stephen, pleading for him to understand, but the weight of her actions had already sealed her fate. Tensions escalated, voices were raised, and at some point, the confrontation turned physical. Amid the chaos, Nicole stormed off to her private quarters, overwhelmed and exhausted. She had no idea that it would be the last night of her life. Later that evening, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the mansion. The Schwarzman maid, Annabeth, had stumbled upon a horrific sight. Nicole Schwarzman lay lifeless in a pool of blood, multiple stab wounds covering her body. Panic erupted in the house as Stephen, Alan, and Vanessa rushed to the scene. The grandeur of their wealth and status could no longer shield them from the brutal reality. Nicole had been murdered, and the killer was among them. The discovery of Nicole Schwarzman's lifeless body sent shockwaves through the mansion. The once opulent home, filled with luxury and prestige, had now become a gruesome crime scene. Annabeth, the Schwarzman's maid, had been the first to stumble upon the horrifying sight. Her screams echoed through the vast estate, drawing Stephen, Alan, and Vanessa to the room in a state of panic. Nicole lay sprawled on the floor, her elegant dress soaked in blood. Multiple stab wounds covered her torso, and the carpet beneath her was stained with the deep red of her final moments. The medical examiner would later determine that the fatal wound was a deep stab near her heart, but the sheer number of wounds indicated a crime of passion, one committed in a fit of rage rather than cold calculation. There were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that the killer had been someone from within the mansion. As the police arrived and cordoned off the area, the initial investigation began. Detectives took note of the lack of struggle, except for a single defensive wound on Nicole's hand, where a thread of fabric had lodged itself. They suspected that Nicole had known her attacker and hadn't anticipated the assault until it was too late. The thread, almost imperceptible to the naked eye, would later prove to be a crucial clue in the case. The police wasted no time in questioning the only people present in the mansion at the time of Nicole's murder: Stephen, Alan, Vanessa, and Annabeth. Each of them was taken in for questioning separately to compare their accounts. Stephen, still in shock over his wife's murder, claimed he had been in his study working late and had not heard anything unusual until Annabeth's screams filled the house. His alibi was weak, no one could confirm his whereabouts. Alan insisted that he had been watching TV in one of the upstairs rooms, while Vanessa claimed she had been in their bedroom reading. However, Annabeth, in her initial statement, contradicted them. She revealed that she had seen Vanessa and Nicole arguing in the living room earlier that evening, and that Alan had been with Nicole shortly afterward. The inconsistencies in their alibis raised suspicion. The police believed that one or more of them were hiding the truth. They also questioned Annabeth more closely, as she had been the one to find the body. Her nervous behavior did not go unnoticed, and detectives wondered if she knew more than she was letting on. As the investigation continued, the police uncovered a shocking detail about the relationships between the Schwarzmans and the Winchesters. Annabeth, after being pressed for more information, finally admitted that the two couples had been engaging in a wife-swapping arrangement for years. This revelation changed everything. The police had initially suspected a love affair, but they had not anticipated that the four individuals had been willingly exchanging partners as part of their lifestyle. With this new information, the investigators shifted their focus. They began to scrutinize the personal dynamics between the four suspects, trying to determine if jealousy, betrayal, or a shift in emotions had led to murder. They knew that Nicole's pregnancy with Alan's child had caused a rift between the couples, and this revelation could have been the breaking point. Vanessa now stood out as a prime suspect. Her fury upon learning about Nicole's pregnancy had been evident, and her potential motive, rage and betrayal, was undeniable. Stephen, too, had a motive. A powerful, influential man like him would not take kindly to public humiliation, especially when the child was not his. Both had strong reasons to want Nicole dead. However, despite the compelling motives, the police lacked physical evidence. No murder weapon had been found, and there were no fingerprints or DNA at the crime scene that directly linked Stephen or Vanessa to the act. The investigation seemed to be stalling. But the detectives weren't ready to give up. Just when the case seemed to be reaching a dead end, a crucial breakthrough occurred. The police obtained a search warrant to comb through the Schwarzman residence once more, determined to find anything they might have previously missed. This time, they examined the incinerator in the mansion's basement, a place often overlooked in initial searches. Inside the ashes, they found it. The murder weapon. A partially burned kitchen knife, its handle charred but still intact, was pulled from the incinerator. The knife matched the wounds found on Nicole's body. The police immediately sent it for forensic analysis, hoping to find traces of DNA or fingerprints that could reveal the killer's identity. When the results came back, they revealed a shocking twist. Annabeth's fingerprints were on the handle. The discovery sent shockwaves through the case, shifting suspicion away from Stephen and Vanessa. Annabeth, the quiet, unassuming maid, was now the prime suspect in Nicole's murder. When confronted with the evidence, Annabeth broke down. With nowhere left to hide, she confessed to the crime. She revealed that Nicole had caught her stealing from the household safe and had threatened to call the police. Panicked and desperate, Annabeth had grabbed a nearby kitchen knife, intending only to silence Nicole. But in the heat of the moment, her fear turned into violence, and she stabbed Nicole repeatedly in a desperate attempt to stop her from exposing the theft. The police had finally uncovered the truth. What had initially seemed like a crime driven by love, jealousy, and betrayal had instead been the result of greed and fear. Annabeth had acted out of desperation, and in doing so, had torn apart the lives of those around her. With Annabeth's confession in hand and forensic evidence supporting the claim, the police wasted no time in formally arresting her for Nicole Schwarzman's murder. The once loyal maid, who had spent years working in the Schwarzman mansion, was now in handcuffs, her face a mix of shock, fear, and regret. As she was escorted to the police station, the realization of her crime seemed to fully settle in. Her hands trembled, and tears welled in her eyes as she muttered words of remorse. She insisted she never intended to kill Nicole, that it had been a crime committed in desperation. But the brutality of the stabbing, the multiple wounds, and the fact that she had tried to dispose of the murder weapon told a different story. Stephen Schwarzman, Alan, and Vanessa Winchester watched in stunned silence as Annabeth was taken away. The scandal that had rocked their lives had taken an unexpected turn, and now, instead of being suspects themselves, they were witnesses to a crime committed by someone they had trusted. However, despite the arrest, the lingering effects of the case continued to shake their lives. Annabeth's trial began several months after her arrest. The prosecution built a strong case, presenting forensic evidence, her confession, and the police's findings. They argued that Nicole's murder had been premeditated. Annabeth had stabbed her multiple times, ensuring she wouldn't survive. Furthermore, they claimed her attempt to burn the murder weapon showed clear intent to destroy evidence. The defense, on the other hand, tried to portray Annabeth as a woman driven by fear rather than malice. They argued that she had panicked when Nicole caught her stealing, and that the stabbing was not a deliberate act of murder, but an impulsive action. They also tried to highlight the chaotic nature of the Schwarzmans and Winchesters' relationships, suggesting that there were other possible suspects with motives. However, Annabeth's own confession, coupled with the physical evidence, made it hard to argue her innocence. Stephen and the Winchesters were called to the stand as witnesses. Their testimonies, while not directly implicating Annabeth, painted a clear picture of the events leading up to Nicole's murder. The shocking revelation of the wife-swapping arrangement was also brought up in court, further sensationalizing the case and drawing significant media attention. After weeks of testimony and legal battles, the jury reached a verdict. The courtroom was tense as the judge read the decision. Guilty of first-degree murder. Annabeth's face turned pale as the weight of the words sank in. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole, citing the brutality of the crime and the attempt to cover it up as aggravating factors. Annabeth broke down in tears as the sentence was handed down. She pleaded for leniency, insisting that she had acted in a moment of panic, but the court remained firm. The Schwarzman family, sitting in the audience, showed little emotion. Stephen, though relieved that his wife's killer had been brought to justice, was still deeply affected by the scandal and the loss of Nicole. The Winchesters, too, remained quiet, their reputations forever tainted by the case. With the trial over, life for Stephen Schwarzman and the Winchesters would never be the same. The murder and the public exposure of their unconventional lifestyle had taken a toll on their reputations. Stephen, once a celebrated businessman, faced scrutiny from both the media and his peers. The Schwarzman name, once synonymous with power and prestige, was now linked to scandal and murder. Alan and Vanessa Winchester also struggled to rebuild their lives. Their marriage, already strained by the events leading up to Nicole's murder, began to crumble. The trust between them had been broken, and the weight of their past decisions hung over them like a dark cloud. They eventually withdrew from public life, choosing to distance themselves from the high society circles they once thrived in. Annabeth, now serving her life sentence, spent her days in a maximum security prison. The once quiet maid who had blended into the background of the Schwarzman household was now a convicted murderer. She often reflected on the night of the crime, haunted by the choices she had made. The case that had begun with a shocking crime and a tangled web of secrets had finally reached its conclusion. However, the scars it left behind would never fully heal. With Annabeth convicted and sentenced to life in prison, the high-profile case seemed to have reached its legal conclusion. However, for those closest to Nicole, her husband, her secret lover, and even the woman who took her life, the aftermath was just beginning. The trial may have ended, but the emotional, financial, and reputational fallout continued to spread like ripples in water. Stephen Schwarzman, once a formidable business magnate, found himself struggling to move forward. The murder of his wife, combined with the public exposure of his unconventional lifestyle, had tarnished his once pristine image. Investors and board members of his company began distancing themselves, questioning whether he could still be the face of a powerful corporation after such a scandal. While no criminal charges had been brought against him, whispers in the financial world suggested that he had lost the respect of his peers. Many believed that while Annabeth had committed the crime, Stephen's lifestyle choices had set the stage for disaster. He spent his days avoiding the press, his nights drowning in regret, wondering whether he could have prevented Nicole's tragic fate. Alan and Vanessa Winchester also faced the repercussions of their choices. Their marriage, once built on mutual indulgence and thrill-seeking, had crumbled under the weight of betrayal and tragedy. Vanessa, having discovered that Nicole was carrying Alan's child, could not forgive the affair that had gone beyond their arrangement. She had initially stood by Alan during the trial, but in the months that followed, she withdrew from their social circles and filed for divorce. Alan, stripped of his glamorous lifestyle and social connections, found himself alone, grappling with guilt over Nicole's death and the damage his actions had caused. Annabeth, now imprisoned for life, sat in her cell reflecting on the choices that had brought her there. She insisted she had never meant to kill Nicole, that she had acted in desperation, but her words carried little weight in the eyes of the law. In prison she became a figure of fascination. Some saw her as a cold-blooded murderer, others as a woman who had made one terrible mistake. Regardless of how people viewed her, the reality was the same. She would spend the rest of her life behind bars, haunted by the bloodstains she could never wash away. The Schwarzman murder case had gripped the nation from the moment it was reported. The combination of wealth, betrayal, and murder made it irresistible to the media, and the press continued to dissect every detail long after the trial ended. News channels ran documentaries, crime podcasts analyzed the evidence, and social media was flooded with theories. Some rational, others wild and conspiratorial. Some believed Annabeth was a scapegoat, that someone else had orchestrated the crime and framed her. Others speculated that the murder had been a crime of passion involving one of the Winchesters. The salacious details of the wife-swapping arrangement only fueled the public's morbid fascination. Talk show hosts invited psychologists to discuss the case, delving into the psychology of those involved. They analyzed Stephen's detachment, Alan's guilt, Vanessa's silent rage, and Annabeth's alleged desperation. Nicole was often portrayed as a tragic figure, a woman trapped in a world of wealth and deception, whose attempts to find fulfillment had led her to an untimely death. Some saw her as a victim of love, others as a woman who played a dangerous game and lost. The Schwarzmans estate, once a place of luxury and high-profile gatherings, became a grim landmark. True crime enthusiasts tried to visit the property, turning it into a morbid tourist attraction. The house, now abandoned, carried an eerie silence, its grand halls and lavish rooms stained by the echoes of its dark past. Despite Annabeth's conviction, many questions lingered. Some investigators still felt that the case had missing pieces. The idea that Annabeth had acted alone seemed suspicious to those who had studied the crime scene in detail. Annabeth, locked away, refused to speak to the media, leaving her true motives buried with her secrets. As the years passed, the Schwarzmans murder case remained one of the most infamous scandals in high society history. Books were written, documentaries were filmed, but no new evidence ever surfaced to change the outcome. Nicole Schwarzman's death became a cautionary tale, a story of love, betrayal, and the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of privilege. And in the end, the truth of what really happened that night in the Schwarzmans mansion remained a mystery that would never be fully unraveled.